You're a go. You're a go.
So we're doing chapter 30 today, dwarf planets and KBOs. KBO stands for Kuiper Belt Object, also pronounced Kuiper Belt Object. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So what is a dwarf planet? Well, here's what you have to be a dwarf planet. You have to orbit a star. That means you're not a moon. Okay, a moon isn't orbiting a star. A moon orbits a planet. So you have to be orbiting a star. You have to have enough mass to be nearly spherical. So you got to be round. So if it's a small body that's not round, they aren't calling it a dwarf planet. You have to have not cleared the area around the orbit of smaller objects. So one thing that's true of any planet that's orbiting the sun, there's no other large body in the area. That planet, in going around, has thrown all the other small bodies out of the area, or has absorbed them and taken them in where they impacted the planet and became part of the planet. So that there's no debris left in its orbit. But for a dwarf planet, there's still debris left in its orbit. Lots of other smaller objects. And it can't be a moon, which means it can't be orbiting a planet. It has to be orbiting the sun. So really the first one there and the last one are kind of in the same idea.
So if it had cleared the area around its orbit and all the other things applied, it would be a regular planet?
It'd be a planet. That's right. Yeah. By the way, that's a picture of Pluto right there.
If you're standing on the dwarf planet, could you see like random clusters of rock?
KBO stands for Kuiper Belt Orbit?
No, because in actuality in space, they're so spread out that even like in the asteroid belt, you think about the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, there's all these asteroids out there, they're really far away from one another. It's not like an asteroid belt like you see in Star Wars where they're like dodging the things and they're flying all around. They're really spread out and you wouldn't even be able to see another one from standing on one. But if you look at the entire thing from afar and you put a dot on every asteroid, then there's a bunch of them. Other questions? Did you have a question?
Do they name the dwarf planets or they just keep them?
Yeah, they name them, and we'll go over some of those next here. First one's called Ceres, or Ceres. That's a dwarf planet in the asteroid belt. So it's between Mars and Jupiter. And there was a spacecraft called Dawn, which recently arrived at Ceres in March 2015. And it orbits Ceres, and it's taken all these pictures. That's the biggest asteroid in the asteroid belt. I think it's 600 miles wide. Jeez. Something like that.
I'm just looking at this
Might be
film.
larger than that. Does anyone have that? Somebody Google how big is Ceres.
How big would it be compared to someone on Earth?
So if it is 600 miles wide, that's about twice the size of Georgia, the state of Georgia. Anyone Googling this for me?
What do you want it?
No.
What am I Googling?
Amir's getting it.
Okay, good.
You got it, Amir?
No, I can't find it.
How big is Ceres?
Oh.
All of these orbit the sun, right?
You do it?
Yes. They orbit the sun.
It's 8.958 times 10 to the 20th.
10 to the 20th what?
kg.
That's how much it weighs. How wide is it?
Oh, 945 kilometers.
945 kilometers, which is how many miles?
About 600.
600 miles. Once again, I'm right.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's about 600 miles wide. So the state of Georgia could fit across that thing a couple of times.
Georgia.
That's a pretty big rock.
Georgia.
The white stuff on it, we know those those little white dots are they're very likely salt deposits from or ice. They're still trying to figure out what that is, but there are a lot of little white spots on it, but for some reason there's a lot right there. And you can see that little white area there, and there's another little white spot there. And so this is where, at some point, probably there was a lot of ice, and it evaporated and left the salt from the ice. What were we going to say?
Does it have an atmosphere?
It doesn't have an
I
atmosphere.
cannot do
It's
this
not
in
big
notes.
enough to hold an atmosphere, so there are no gases around it. Do you like Ceres? Is it your favorite dwarf planet?
No.
Nah.
Pluto's mine.
Let's talk about Pluto. So Pluto was discovered. It's very interesting, the story of how Pluto was discovered. So this guy right here, Percival Lowell, he was an astronomer and a mathematician. He's kind of a famous dude. One of the things he was famous for was he thought he saw canals on Mars through his telescope. He thought he saw big lines where he imagined that some aliens had built these big canals to connect their cities together, and he thought water might be running through them. And he was a respected scientist, and he came out with these drawings and stuff showing these canals on Mars that he said he'd seen through his telescopes, and he thought that there were aliens on Mars. And that's where the term Martian comes from. It comes from this guy, Percival Lowell. And he built this giant telescope, and it's called the Lowell Observatory. I forget where it is. It's in the United States somewhere. But anyway, he's very famous, and he was wrong about there being canals on Mars. There are not canals on Mars. And another thing that he was associated with was finding Pluto. Now, he had made measurements of Neptune's orbit. Do y'all remember how they found Neptune?
Because they saw no, that was Uranus. Never mind.
Does anyone remember how they found Neptune? Mathematicians found it.
Oh.
It wobbled because of Uranus's gravity.
I thought that was Uranus. That was stellar occultation.
You're close. You're getting close.
The winking out.
That's what that
How
was.
did they find Neptune?
That's Uranus.
Uranus wobbled, and so they knew that there was another big source of gravity out there.
Exactly. Uranus would, during Uranus's orbit, it would speed up right about here as it got close to Neptune, and then slow down as it went past Neptune, just by a little bit. And they figured Neptune was out there because the gravity of Neptune making Uranus speed up and slow down a little bit. Y'all remember this? So, Lowell noticed the same thing in Neptune, that Neptune would speed up a little bit and slow down a little bit in its orbit. And Lowell said there must be another planet further out than Neptune making Neptune do this. And he called it Planet X. And there was a search for Planet X. The whole last 20 years of his life, he was trying to find this Planet X that was further out than Neptune. And he mathematically figured out where it should be, and he put a telescope there, and he looked for it, and he never found it, and he died. Well, after his death, this guy Clyde Tombaugh comes along, and he's part of a research institution that's still looking for Planet X many years after Lowell died. This is in like 1920s, I think. And they find it. This guy right here finds Pluto out there real close to where Percival Lowell said it should be. And the funny thing about all this is, in actuality, when they go back and look at Lowell's mathematics and stuff, they find out he was wrong. There was nothing, Neptune didn't have a problem in its orbit like he said there was. It was just luck that Tombaugh found the planet where Lowell said it should be. Lowell was wrong. There are no perturbations of Neptune's orbit. So that was just a lucky break. So Tombaugh finds the planet, and Lowell sort of gets credit for discovering it, even though it was just a mistake he had made. Isn't that a cool story?
Yeah.
That guy failed his entire life.
Well, not really, because he built this giant telescope, this observatory telescope that saw all sorts of things. So he had a lot of discoveries, but two of the major things that he's known for are failures. Yeah. Percival Lowell, he's an interesting dude. But yeah, he also discovered a lot of things through his big telescope. Somebody Google, where is the Lowell Observatory? Where's the Lowell? He's got a big observatory named after him, and I don't remember where it is.
It is in Flagstaff, Arizona.
Arizona. So when they did finally find out where Pluto was, they turned telescopes toward it and took a bunch of pictures. And this is the best picture we had of Pluto. It was taken by the Hubble Space Telescope. When we launched it, they turned it toward Pluto and took a picture, and they found that Pluto actually has a moon, a big moon called Charon. And by the way, Pluto's the god of the underworld. Do y'all know that? The god of death. And Charon is the boatman that takes the souls to the underworld. Have y'all ever heard that?
Yeah.
And so Charon and Pluto are associated in mythology. And then there's a couple other moons that go around Pluto called Nix and Hydra that were discovered. And that was the best picture we had of Pluto until last year. They launched a mission to see Pluto. It was called the New Horizons mission. They launched it in 2009 or 2007 maybe. And it just got to Pluto this past summer. And they finally took pictures and they beamed them back to Earth by radio waves. And now we have pictures of Pluto. And that never happened until just this summer. And I remember, I've been teaching this class for 10, 12 years now, and I've always told them every year, we're going to have a picture of Pluto. It's coming. Just wait. And we finally got the picture. So that's kind of cool. There's what Pluto actually looks like up close. So what's the deal with Pluto? It's about 1/5 of the Earth's diameter. You could fit 5 Plutos into one Earth, going just straight across. It rotates in about 6.4 days. It rotates on its axis. It's tidally locked to Charon, its moon that's around it. The two are tidally locked together, so their same face constantly points at one another. And they orbit around each other at 6.4 days, which also means that they spin in 6.4 days. And they're both going around the sun. Because Pluto and Charon are so big and so close together and kind of move together, it's sometimes called a double planet system, a double dwarf planet. It's made mostly of ice, they think, because it's low density. It's not very heavy. It's 1/5 the diameter of the Earth, but its mass is real low compared. We know because it's so light. It's not rock. It's not mostly rock. It's mostly ice or something. Different sorts of ices: nitrogen ice, water ice, ammonia ice. These frozen chemicals that make up this planet, and they're still trying to figure out from the readings they got more about it. They know that this big white spot here is shaped like a heart. Is mostly ice there. It's not geologically active, so it's not like Io or Venus or anything like that, or even Triton. It doesn't have geysers or anything like that they know about. There it is. It's Pluto. Yeah.
How close was the camera to the planet that took that photo?
It was on that New Horizons spacecraft, which sped by only over just a couple days. It went past it, it had a zoom lens. So I don't know exactly how close it got to the planet. That's another thing you could Google. Can somebody Google New Horizons spacecraft? How close did it get to Pluto? I would guess it's thousands. I'll make a guess. 1,000 miles, 1,500 miles.
Oh goodness. It says Oh, that was the closest from Earth. It is.
How close? What was its closest approach to? Closest approach or something like that?
It flew 12,500 kilometers above the surface of Pluto.
Which is about
7,000
7,000 miles, 8,000 miles.
Oh my gosh.
So
And
I was
it's that picture?
Yep.
Oh.
Got a good camera with a zoom lens. Of course, 8,000 miles. What's the width of Pluto?
2,000?
1/5 of Earth's diameter.
So yeah, so that's Earth's diameter is about 8,000 miles. So 1/5 of that. So this is about 1,500 miles wide, something like that. So it's about 5 times the width of the planet away from the planet.
It said it flew like 4.6 billion miles from Earth.
Yeah, to get there. It's a long way. That's why it took 7 years or 9 years or whatever it was. I think it was 9 years to get there. You want to see video footage of Pluto?
Sure.
Heck yeah, you want to see video footage.
We begin with a
My
word.
arm's even out.
You cannot stop this manifestation. The start of action.
Is that a rainbow on it?
Spelled out.
See a rainbow?
As a new blockbuster. How does that fun? Unlike anything you've ever seen. It's a rare film worth seeing in 3D. This is just the beginning. Dr. Strange for the PG-13. Get tickets in 3D and IMAX 3D.
So that's Pluto, and it's not the cratered ancient barren rock of blandness I thought it was going to be. Hi there, I'm Ian O'Neill, space producer for Discovery News, and today I'm at YouTube Space in LA to talk a little bit about NASA's New Horizons mission to Pluto and some Kuiper Belt awesomeness. As you may have heard, New Horizons zoomed through the Plutonian system on July 14th, carrying out another war flyby photos. During its brief encounter after flying through the solar system for nearly a decade to get there, the probe carried out thousands and thousands of observations of the dwarf planet and its wonderfully diverse moons. The probe is now hurtling through the Kuiper Belt, nearly 17 million miles from Pluto. Although the flyby was over in a matter of minutes, huge quantities of data is now stored in the spacecraft's memory, and it's going to take over a year for the mission to beam all that information back to Earth. But already we're seeing some rather dreamy, high-resolution views of a surprisingly dynamic and frankly amazing little world. Now, before we get on to what Pluto really is, let's look back at what we thought it would look like before we got these very privileged close-up views. Pluto lives in the Kuiper Belt, a frozen hinterland in the outer solar system. In recent years, dozens and dozens of other smaller objects have been discovered out there, but only a small number have so far been categorized as dwarf planets. In 2005, Kuiper Belt astronomer Mike Brown discovered the small world Eros. That discovery spurred on the debate of what a planet actually is, resulting in the controversial decision by the IAU to reclassify Pluto as a dwarf planet in 2006. As it turns out, with the help of New Horizons, Pluto's size has been precisely measured. And although it may not technically be a planet, it is the king of the dwarf planets, beating Eros' width by 20 or so miles. The question of whether or not Pluto is a planet now seems rather academic, as New Horizons has revealed a world that is unlike anything else in our solar system. It doesn't even resemble Neptune's moon Triton, which came as a surprise to astronomers. The biggest surprise for me and many planetary scientists is how young Pluto's surface is. Living in the Kuiper Belt, one would expect Pluto to have a craggy cratered and ancient surface, not too dissimilar to its inner solar system dwarf planet cousin, Eros, or even our moon for that matter. The Kuiper Belt is supposed to be a historic frozen record in time when the solar system was violently forming and smashing asteroids and planets together. Mike Brown refers to the Kuiper Belt as the blood spatter of the solar system, where the forensic evidence for the solar system's violent formation years, billions of years ago, can be found frozen in time. But Pluto's surface appears fresh, only a few tens of millions of years old. So this evidence has been mostly eroded away by surprisingly dynamic processes. Amazingly, through high-res images of Pluto, we can see active ice flows around mountains, much like glaciers on Earth. Where the energy comes from to support these flows is, for the moment, anybody's guess. Then there's Pluto's heart. I mean, really, a heart emoji. Pluto is just messing with us, sure. The heart, named Tombaugh Regio after Pluto's 1930 discoverer Clyde Tombaugh, is a wonderfully exotic region containing ice sheets, mountain ranges, and active geological features. The entire surface is covered in a rich assortment of minerals and chemicals that will likely take scientists years and years to understand where they came from and how they fit in the early formation of our solar system. And then there's Pluto's atmosphere. Although we've known for years that the dwarf planet possessed a thin atmosphere, New Horizons was able to look back through these atmospheric gases after flyby, seeing a beautiful solar eclipse, taking critical measurements of the atmospheric chemicals. New Horizons has found that Pluto's atmosphere is a complex hydrocarbon factory where methane gets broken down by the UV light from the sun, and more complex hydrocarbon compounds create an ice particle haze at lower altitudes. Those compounds then undergo chemical alterations, freezing onto Pluto's surface as tholins. And tholins are exciting as they are the prebiotic chemicals that all life as we know it is based on. Even though we're in the early stages of understanding New Horizons observations, we're already seeing an incredibly complex Pluto that seems to have surpassed everyone's wildest fantasies as to how exotic this place really is. And I haven't even discussed Pluto's moons yet, including Charon, which could be considered to be Pluto's binary partner. That will have to wait for a future video. So does it matter whether or not Pluto is classified as a planet? In my view, no. Actually, I think Pluto is showing us just how diverse and complex planetary bodies can be, and perhaps our notion as to what constitutes a planet is woefully outdated. Does it really annoy you that Pluto's been classified a dwarf planet, or don't you really care? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if you want more dwarf planet weirdness, check out my video about the NASA Dawn mission to Ceres. After leaving Asteroid Vesta in late 2012, the solar-powered robotic probe will become the first mission to visit Ceres. Dawn will reach Ceres, the solar system's innermost dwarf planet, by early April. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more D news every day of the week.
Yeah. There's Pluto compared to Earth and Earth's moon. So that's Earth. Do y'all recognize Earth?
Yeah.
That's Pluto. That's Charon. And that's how far Pluto is from Charon, right there, compared to the size of the Earth. So they're really close together. And there's our moon, the size of our moon. Now, our moon is really a lot further from Earth than it shows here. Our moon will be way out in the hall somewhere. Toward the end of the hall, probably, if the Earth were that big. You can see Pluto's smaller than our moon. Isn't that weird?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Pluto has a tilted orbit, different from where all the other planets are. So this line here is called the ecliptic. Have y'all ever heard that word before, the ecliptic? That's the plane in which all the planets are like in the same plane, which we call the ecliptic, and only vary from the ecliptic by a couple degrees. But Pluto is on a 17-degree tilt to the ecliptic. And a lot of Kuiper Belt objects are like that. A lot of things out there in the Kuiper Belt aren't in the same plane. They're slightly tilted one way or the other on the plane. And so that 17-degree tilt is kind of weird. It's got a highly elliptical orbit in that it's not a nice circle like the rest of the planets. It's a real compact circle. And at one point, when it's at its closest point to the Sun, it's actually closer to the Sun than Neptune is. So from the years 1979 to 1999, that's when I was in school, Neptune wasn't the farthest planet from the Sun. Pluto wasn't the farthest planet of the Sun. Neptune was. Pluto was closer than Neptune. Charlie, you getting any of this?
Yes,
You seem as if you are not. So between 1979 and 1999, Pluto was closer than Neptune to the Sun. And then in 1999, because of the elliptical orbit of Pluto, it's farther and farther, and it's going away, and it's going to be farther than Neptune from the Sun for another, it's 248 years to orbit the Sun once. So for another 220 years, it'll be farther out than Neptune.
But there would never be an instance where Neptune and Pluto could collide.
No, and that's a good question. And the reason is because the way their orbits are, they're not on a. It's like Adrian, do your arms like this. It's like that's the orbit of Neptune, and here's the orbit of Pluto. And you see how my arms never touch one another?
Right.
So they're not. So Pluto can actually go closer than Neptune to the Sun, but then it's farther away, and the orbits never collide. So the two will never collide. Isn't that interesting? That's it for Pluto. Questions about Pluto? Yes.
So that guy was saying in the video that there's kind of discussion now that it could be a real planet.
No.
Oh, okay.
There was an argument whether Pluto should not be a dwarf planet, and they decided to make it a dwarf planet, and they decided to come up with this name dwarf planet because they started discovering a lot of other things in the Kuiper Belt other than Pluto. So let me just show you a couple of things they discovered. One of them's called Maki Maki.
Mahi mahi.
Not Mahi Mahi, which is a fish, and
Great.
it's good. But this is Maki Maki, which is a Hawaiian name. That's one of the things they've done is they've started giving a lot of astronomical objects Hawaiian names because they're running out of the mythology names. And so Maki Maki is a Hawaiian name, and this is a picture of Maki Maki, and that little arrow is pointing to its moon. Maki Maki actually has a moon, kind of like Pluto has a moon. And this is as good a picture as we have of Maki Maki. It's further out than Pluto. It's about 3/4 of the size of Pluto. It's almost as big as Pluto. It's also a dwarf planet. It's round. It's got all the dwarf planet classification issues taken care of. Takes 310 years to orbit the sun. It does have a moon. We haven't visited it yet with a spacecraft, so we don't know really what it looks like, but it's out there. And when they discovered this, they're going, wait a sec, we got Pluto, now we got this other dwarf planet, and then they discovered another one, which is called Eros. And this is a picture of Eros, and Eros also has a moon. And Eros is actually bigger than Pluto by mass. If you consider the mass of it, it's heavier than Pluto. It's a little bit smaller than Pluto if you consider the diameter, but it's pretty much about the size of Pluto. It's way further out than Pluto. It takes 557 years to go around the sun once. And it also has a moon. That little moon there is called Dysnomia. And it goes around Eros once every 16 days. They might be tidally locked. I don't think they're sure of that yet. But once they discovered Maki Maki and Eros, then they started going, wait a second, we're going to have, if we call each one of these things a planet, pretty soon there's going to be, as we discover these things, there's going to be 100 planets kids have to learn. That's not going to work. You see what I'm saying? So they had to say, well, what are we going to do? And what they decided on was this dwarf planet classification that puts everything, if it's in this large group, and they think there's probably, in the Kuiper Belt, there's probably at least 300 objects about the size of Pluto out there. And some may be bigger than Pluto, they just haven't discovered them yet. And so instead of kids having to learn names of 300 different planets, that's too much. We'll just call them dwarf planets, and we'll say they're out there, and Ceres is included in the same classification. And there was precedent for this before. Ceres was discovered in between Mars and Jupiter, and that for a while, for like 20 or 30 years, that was the next planet from the sun after Mars. It was the 5th planet, was Ceres. And then they discovered that Ceres was actually in an asteroid belt, and they declassified it as a planet. They did the same thing to Pluto. They declassified it as a planet. Since it's in this big Kuiper belt, it doesn't really count as one. So the same thing was done to Ceres. Here's all the ones they've discovered so far that are in the Kuiper belt. Eros and Dysnomia, that's the one we talked about. There's Pluto and Charon, we've already known about them, and Nix and Hydra, 2 other moons going around Pluto. Pluto's a big system out there. There's Maki Maki. There's Haumea, one we didn't talk about. They've also discovered Sedna and Orcus and Quoar, and one that they haven't even named, they've just given a number. These are all dwarf planets that have been discovered already. Do you want to hear the dwarf planet song?
Yes.
Heck yeah.
I'd love to.
Dwarf Planet song.
There are 8 planets in the solar system. You guys had your chance in the spotlight. It's time to talk about the dwarf planets in our solar system. Hit it, guys.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
There are 5 dwarf planets in our solar system, and we revolve
The one that's moving
around
like
the sun.
sounded like this is kind of funny.
4 of us live in the Kuiper Belt. As far as planets, we're the smallest ones. My name is Ceres, and I am a dwarf planet. I'm the closest dwarf to the sun. There's mysterious white spots on my rocky surface, and I am the smallest one. My name is Pluto. I'm a dwarf planet and was the 9th planet from the sun. I am 1/3 water in the form of ice and have 5 moons that are lots of fun. My name's Haumea. I am oval in shape due to the fast rotations that I make. I take 285 years to orbit the sun because I am so far away. There are 5 dwarf planets in our solar system, and we revolve around the sun. 4 of us live in the Kuiper Belt. As far as planets, we're the smallest ones. I'm Maki Maki. I have no atmosphere. I was discovered in 2005. I am one of the reasons Pluto lost his status, so naturally we do not jive. My name is Eros. I'm more massive than Pluto. I am big, but lots of fun. 557 is the amount of years it takes me to revolve around the sun. There are 5 dwarf planets in our solar system, and we
The sun's just
revolve
chilling.
around the sun.
Come on now.
4 of us live
Watch the
in
sun rise. It
Kuiper
goes over and then
Belt.
back.
As far as planets, we're the smallest ones.
Aww.
Swallow us.
That's cute.
Isn't that good?
That was really good. I mean,